I'm Wish. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the founder of Into the Orbit Consulting. More importantly, and more relevant, I'm the host of this podcast, Rainbows and Bullshit. Rainbows and Bullshit is the podcast where we throw out the patented, power-polished corporate script, and we talk about the beautiful, messy parts of us that bring our whole selves into the workplace. Each episode, I sit down with a brilliant guest. These are amazing people. They're leaders, they're change makers, they're creatives. And we unpack their stories through 3 personal words. And they can be anything. No fluff, no posturing, just honest reflections, sharp insights, and a little bit of chaos. Rainbows and Bullshit was born out of a need for space. Space to unpack and honestly experience navigating systems that weren't built for people like us. It's about what it means to lead with integrity, to build inclusive spaces, and to do the deep, uncomfortable human work of change. If you're tired of surface level inclusion talk and you're ready for something a bit more real, honest and human, you're in the right place. So grab a drink, take a breath, and let's get into it.
Welcome to the episode of Rainbows and Bullshit. I'm here this morning with, how would I describe, Tiger is someone I've known of before I've actually known, and has been a mentor, has been a friend, has been someone I've been wanting to get on the show for quite a while. I think I asked you if you, when I did season 2 actually, and the stars have finally aligned, and so I'm in the studio this morning with the amazing Tiger de Souza. Tiger, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Thanks. What can you say? It's what introduction. I've kind of worked sector pretty much my whole career. I've kind of grown up in the world of people, started off in the volunteering stuff and evolved into the wider people professional. Been at a whole load of charities. Generally just want to make the world a better place. And, the power of people, I've seen it and witnessed it firsthand. I've experienced it, I've been supported by it. I think that people are the bedrock that make great things happen. So, whatever I can do.
Have you always been in HR though? So, did you start in HR? What was your people career trajectory?
So I started in volunteering. So it was one of those things of I wanted to be a lawyer.
Right.
And I was a sports president, and I saved up money. And my bank manager said, "I'll lend you more if you work." And I was sports president, so I saved all this money up, and I had the cash. And then, because I'd worked in sport for a year, I was like, "Oh, hang on a minute, I actually want to work in sport." So then there was this detour. Went to Loughborough, did a master's in sport management. So then when I graduated, when you graduate from university looking for your first proper job, and essentially it's kind of like, what job can I get? And I was lucky. I think luck has played a big part. So I graduated in 2004.
Right.
And that was just before the year of the volunteer.
Okay.
In 2005. So there were a whole raft of volunteering in sport jobs that came up.
Right.
And I knew that. I wrote my dissertation about it. So I ended up doing volunteering in sport. And I thought originally that would just be my entry route. But I love volunteering and volunteers. I just think they're brilliant. And it's fascinating. And so my career then evolved in that volunteering world. And it wasn't until I got to NSPCC where I was head of volunteering there that I had a brilliant manager, Siobhan, who said to me, "I see a wider, broader people professional in you." And so that's when my OD development kicked in.
Oh, wow.
And then I became people person now. So that's kind of been the journey. But yeah, it's all accidental, none of it planned.
That is actually interesting, because obviously many of us in the HR profession, generous HR background and starting a career, but you're starting from a position of volunteering, being you're excited and passionate about volunteering. I know this because obviously my last job was at NCVO. I know you've been a trustee there, and you've really kind of you were strategically quite involved in some significant kind of conversations that NCVO had. What do you think now of it? So volunteering is obviously still within your portfolio, and you now work obviously at, arguably, if people think about volunteering in this country, one of the institutions, one of the brands that I think of is definitely Samaritans. I mean, how has that journey gone for you from being from NSPCC to then that broader portfolio to kind of now where you are?
Yeah, I mean, I have always looked across throughout my career at the volunteers at Samaritans and just thought, wow, in terms of the commitment, the dedication, and what the nature of what they do. I mean, I've done the training, and I can't go on the phones. I can't do what they do because emotionally I'm just not. I don't feel I'm strong enough or resilient enough to be able to do the volunteering role. So yeah, I've always had enormous respect for Samaritans volunteers. But yeah, I think that evolution is actually more natural. It's surprising that not more people make the transition. And I think about the charity sector and the fact that for large numbers of organisations, the bulk of the people who deliver the outcome for the organisation are volunteers. I mean, even though I was at National Trust, which is massive, we had like 11,000 staff, still had 50, 60,000 volunteers out there helping the organisation to do what it does. So I think it's an interesting one that within our sector there haven't been more volunteering people that have developed, evolved, and become directors of people.
Yeah, that is so. That is actually that is very intriguing, given the, as you say, the large. Yeah, given the voluntary sector, actually, that has actually made me think as well about lots of different things that we've spoke about before in terms of equity and getting into volunteering in the first place, etc., etc. So we'll start with your. So I asked you to check in three themes, and your first theme that you wanted to check in was ways of working. So start with, tell me a little bit more about why you chose that theme as an area that you wanted to talk about.
Well, I would say that I can be a bit maverick, but I also like to push at the boundaries and push at the edges and challenge kind of like thinking. I'm very curious, why do we do things in that way? And I think we had a very fixed idea about how we work up until the pandemic.
Right, yeah.
It was pretty much, it was 9 to 5 in the office, that was it. Maybe a bit of flex, but not really very much.
Yeah.
Very rigid. Mm-hmm. And the pandemic happened, and then we were all like in this crazy world, we're all at home, we're trying to juggle a million things, and then we're not really set up for it properly, but somehow we managed to make our way through. And I find it intriguing that we've been through that, and there are still elements, parts of, organisations who want to regress back to what we had before, like it was perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that being completely at home, I mean, I'm massively introverted, and I was saying to my team just yesterday, how I've been more energised this week because I've spent more time in person with people.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a balance to be struck.
Yeah.
And there is a new world out there. I mean, I've been inspired by people like Alex Hurst and Izzy Penny with their work style revolution, and just helping us to get to a place where we are thinking differently about, well, how do we create ways of working that actually enable people to be at their best, perform at their best, still build the relationships and manage them, but also balance that more appropriately with their lives. I mean, think about how much time you spend commuting, and how much energy that drains from you, and what creativity that saps from you. And so, I think it's high on my agenda because I think there are things that we need to explore. We need to have a bigger and better conversation than the number of days in a fixed location, which is where I feel we've landed.
Yeah, no, I've seen you speak about this, and you are very passionate about reimagining how you can engage your workforce. I think so I'm keen to get your take on the ways of working. Where were you when the pandemic happened?
I was at National Trust.
Right.
And in many ways, COVID saved me because I joined the National Trust. It was an amazing job. The whole inclusion agenda, I was like, oh my God, if I can do that there, what a thing that would be. And so I went, but I live in Ipswich and they're in Swindon.
Right, yeah.
I was doing like a 3-hour journey down there. I was staying overnight. I was staying away from my family. I was down there for like 2 or 3 days a week and then coming back home exhausted.
Oh God.
And so the break in the ability to work in a more of a remote way, more of a hybrid way, made a big difference to me, just from an energy level perspective, but also I think changed my mindset. But so I was there when COVID happened. There's a whole raft of stuff we had to do there, but I think we'll save that for another day.
Well, so there's a lot of conflict. There's so much emotion around ways of working right now. It's all started obviously from the pandemic. We all had to make that shift. We see it in the newspapers. I mean, another big bank, I think last week, was saying everyone needs to be back in 5 days a week. So we're seeing this shift in thinking. Do you think there's a generational thing here with expectation of work? Because I speak to lots of people about this, and I do think that views differ based on people's experience of work. I don't know where you are on this.
I put experience to one side, and I think about what are the outcomes that I want to deliver. If we think so, I think a good comparator to it is education.
Yeah.
So the way we educate, my son has just done his GCSEs, the way we educate our kids in this country is bonkers now. Because we train them to pass the test. So effectively what we do is we say, right, the exams that you're going to sit, that will determine your career outcomes and your life, your life success or, your potential failure will be driven by your ability to consume, absorb a huge amount of information and be able to then regurgitate that information on demand in a test environment.
Yeah.
Now, that goes back to the Victorian era, and we've got a whole lot of people, brilliant, bright people who are responsible for how we shape education in the country that have all excelled going through this process.
Right.
But think about the world today with AI. When I grew up, right, my mum still, bless her, my mum still got all the Encyclopedia Britannicas at home that we have.
Oh, I love an Encyclopedia Britannica.
If you don't sit stuff as homework, you research by looking in a book.
Oh, absolutely. But do those brown, so the brown ones.
You've got a red children's one somewhere here.
I love them. Weirdly, it's comforting to go back to a book these days because you kind of feel safer on the pages than I would on the mobile phone or an iPad.
You absolutely. I mean, there is something about the feeling of paper in your fingertips and reading through stuff and research. But I think that now, like my kids, if they want to find something out, they go on the internet, they find it in seconds. The power of AI and its ability to both, extract a whole load of information and synthesize it for you to make sense.
Yeah.
So in the world of work, they are not going to be expected to hold a huge amount of information and be able to regurgitate it on demand. What they're going to be asked to do is, can you go out and as efficiently as possible research something and then come back to us with your interpretation of the information that you've got?
Yeah.
And so in the same way with the way of work, I think we've become trapped in this is what we've known. Like my success has been being in the office from 7 to 7 and building relationships with people in person. And we romanticise about water cooler conversations, but my memory is if I was ever called by a water cooler chatting to a colleague, I was promptly told to go and sit back at my desk.
Exactly right. And every time people say that, I go a bit like, I've never
No, there are elements around when you're in a physical building with each other, you share information, you have conversations and stuff. But I think we've created this bizarre ideal. So I think there is an element around there are some people who've come through it who cannot envisage a world in which you can be successful being at home. I think there's been a narrative in the media about people in their pyjamas and slacking off and not working hard and not doing the stuff. Despite the fact we managed to keep the lights on during the pandemic when the whole world kind of caved in.
So, and volunteering, I mean, back to what you were saying about volunteering. I mean, if there's any moment in time in history where people could physically see the impact of volunteering, I remember, especially on where I was, and people shopping, and it brought out the very best, I think, of society, but it also brought out, all these questions around how we work.
Well, if you think about volunteering, we're looking at, statistics are coming out telling us the rate of volunteering has dropped and it's in decline. But you then look at the fact that you had a whole load of people who were on furlough, who wanted to do something practical with their time. Now, let's just imagine for a moment, as a standard, we didn't really expect anyone to travel to a physical place of work more than, say, 2 days a week.
Yeah.
Right. Then you're giving people, especially with the commuting distances and times lots of people have, you're giving people a huge number of hours additionally per week in their life. I feel quite confident that a large number of those people would redeploy those toward volunteering activity and would give back to their communities because that's how we're wired as a society. So, I think I'm frustrated by where the conversation's gone, and I think that there is so much more opportunity for us to think differently in ways that will boost society, will stimulate the economy, and will make a bigger difference to more people.
I agree. One of the things that I know you've been on a campaign with over the last, certainly a few years, has been around job sharing.
Yes.
Tell me more about that. What prompted you to because you're super, I remember seeing you speak at the People Power Summit, not last year, I think it was the year before. And you came in hot. But it was good because the room was loads of people really inspired by that concept. A lot of people were like, oh, we've never thought about that. The point thing, I think it was the point, it was the way you said to do budget planning or to think about budget planning with 1 point something extra. Yeah. And I think that kind of sparked a lot of people like, oh my God, that makes it feel tangible and real and something we can actually try and do. But how did that come about?
Well, do you know what? This is just about being curious. I was having a conversation. Kizzy, who worked at Samaritans, was in a job share in a senior role, and I'd never seen job sharing in a senior role before. And so we had a senior leaders meeting, we're having pizza, and I asked Kizzy about job share. And I effectively said, how come it's not more mainstream? How come we don't see more of it? and she gave me her reflections on, some of the challenges that she's faced and some of the issues and problems. And I sat there with my people hat on, and I was like, I think we could fix all of those.
Right.
I don't think those are significant. I think if organisations thought in the right way, we could make that. So I just put a curious post on LinkedIn, and I've written like a blog for like a year. I've written a blog post once a week for a year. And I had never had the degree of reaction to just a question that I put on about job sharing. And I was like, there is definitely something here. And so I started speaking to people. The more I spoke to people, the more I became, I think I became almost frustrated and angry about the fact that this was something that made sense for all parties, and yet we hadn't done anything. And like the budgeting thing that you mentioned was like, we'll do 1.2. So budget for a role at 1.2. You have two people doing 3 days a week.
Yeah.
You've given them a crossover day in the middle, and you get more. You'll definitely get more. I've not spoken to a single job share pairing and not left that conversation feeling inspired by them and feeling like, my God, those people will knock down walls for their organisations and will make a big difference. So, if other organisations don't want to go there and don't want to do it, that's fine by me, because I think the ones that do will see the benefit and will also create pathways for people to progress. And I think that the last thing before I get my job share soapbox is we talk a lot about gender pay gap. We talk about closing the gender. People get very excited about, yes, we've shifted us by one. I believe to my core that if we mainstream job sharing and it was a normal practice, you'd almost eradicate the gender pay gap overnight. And more not overnight, because it would take years in order to do the catch-up stuff. But because it means that, and it's for all people, it's for people who might be disabled, people for any reason with caring responsibilities, or lifestyle things where they don't want to work full time. You don't have to sacrifice your career, because you can partner up with someone, and even if it's for a short term or for the rest of your career, work in a job share and still progress.
Thank you. No, it's not you on the soapbox. This is you really kind of passionately campaigning for, again, reimagining these bizarre concepts that we built around work, what a full-time equivalent means, and how we can engage more of the market into it. So one of the things I'm thinking off the back of that was the fractional. The word fractional has been it's everywhere at the moment. And I saw a post last week. I can't remember who it was, but someone was like, what's the difference between part-time and fractional? Like, fractional just seems to get more energy and excitement around it. So what's your take on that in terms of job sharing or fractional roles, etc.?
I would say it's a bit. I feel it's potentially could be a bit buzzy.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason why I have concerns is because there are too many people I've encountered that are technically working at 0.8, so 4 days a week.
Right.
But the reality is they're doing 5 days like everyone else, we're just paying them less. So I think fractional has a. If we're going to take the term fractional and we're going to use that term to reinvent what we mean by someone working 3 or 4 days a week and genuinely create roles that fit into that space, then it could be a game changer.
Right.
So that's my hope for it. My fear is that it becomes a way around, so like talking about part-time work in a slightly different way, but not addressing any of the issues that we've got with part-time working, which is that generally what tends to happen quite often is that as you get more senior and you're in a part-time role, you tend to, the boundaries bleed and you end up working more than your contracted hours. I mean, I know I work more than my contract hours, I know I do, but I think that there's probably a disproportionate impact on people who are working on those kind of like 4 day a week type roles in more senior positions.
Absolutely. I also do think there's I don't want to go back to generational, but I do think given some of the people are coming into you perhaps very early on in their experience of work, who wouldn't give any extra wouldn't work any extra hours. I noticed that very starkly actually between the expectation of work and giving back, or working, with people who are more senior perhaps, then certainly people coming into the labour market now, where it's like, these are my hours. And I think that's just a really interesting shift, because, we millennials at one point kind of making that shift from another generational way of, so it's just, the way the world's kind of moving, isn't it, really? Yeah,
I mean, I think I would say that there are pros on both sides. I mean, I think that my work ethic stems from both my parents, who are absolute Trojans. I mean, I've never, come across. I mean, I know there's loads of people with similar stories, but their work ethic was unbelievable, and the sacrifices they made to give me and my siblings like the best possible start in life. But I would also say that in terms of the volume of work that I do, there is an element in relation to my identity. So being a young black man and wanting to progress in my career, I've always felt like I've had to go a little bit further. I've always, that being good is all right.
Yeah.
Being great, not quite enough. Being exceptional might just
Make me feel
get you that next step, get you noticed that bit more. So there has been, I think, an element of an internalised perception that I need to work harder than my counterparts, because if I don't, then I might not necessarily be as successful. And that might be true, it might be false, I don't know, but that's my experience thus far. So, but yeah, I think that we need to create better balance between our expectations of people and their working lives. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for checking that in. I really feel that I resonate with that. Working twice the hard aspect, that kind of and similar kind of inspiration. My parents came to this country. My mum didn't know the language, so I have. I think it's really inspiring to hear stories of how we imbibe some of those values or see what we see from our parents. So thank you for sharing that. I'll talk about kind and nice as your next kind of theme. I love this theme. This is one of the bedrocks of my consultancy at the moment. I'm not joking, I was thinking about this on the way in. I think I talk every day about this concept in some shape or form, whether it's clients or culture work or audits and stuff. So, but I want to understand why did you choose that theme, that concept to check in?
I'm in life in the charity sector. I can't see myself leaving. And pretty much every organisation in the charity sector I've ever worked for, everyone's always kind of like the first couple of days, it's like, oh look, it's such a nice organisation. Everyone here is so lovely. And there's a positive, they are genuinely nice organisations, and it's very lovely. But I think as I've progressed, I've started to question, is niceness actually doing us a favour, or is it actually a hindrance? Is it helping us, or is it holding us back? And I think that you can be nice, but if you're being nice, it might be that you don't ask a question or a challenging question around something, or you don't give someone some feedback that would help them in terms of their onward growth and development. You stay silent maybe when you should speak up, and so what you end up doing is you end up actually shortchanging both your colleagues and the organisation from maybe some of the grit that exists in making the best possible decisions to move forward. And I see feedback as a gift, so I love it when people kind of like come to me and they say, this is something that I've noticed, and this is how it impacts on me, and you might and so And so you can be kind in terms of how you either interject with a question, or how you provide someone with some feedback, or how you might challenge the organisation's thoughts around certain things they're looking to do, or some processes. You can do that with kindness and still leave that person feeling positive after that interaction, but actually making a better difference than if you're just being nice. So I think it's a critical distinction that we probably don't talk enough about, but particularly in the charity sector is something that could be the bedrock that takes us from where we are now to where we need to be.
Yeah, and so I could have a whole day talking about kindness, apology, because I do think you are one of the leaders in the sector that demonstrate the kind, not nice aspect, in terms of who you are and your values and peace. Why do you think that's the case? I've worked in the private sector, I've worked in the public sector, and obviously the last kind of decade or so in the charity voluntary sector. Certainly the most impact on this theme has been my experience of working in the charity sector. Why do you think that is?
I think there is an element around the nature of the work that we do, that we recognise that the work that we do can be difficult, can be challenging. I think there is an element around bleeding from the service that we provide externally to the people who rely on the things that we deliver as an organisation, and our charitable purpose, and then that starts to impact. And also I feel like I think one of the biggest challenges for us is I don't think necessarily we push ourselves hard enough to eradicate ourselves from existence.
Right.
So If you think, so if you think about a corporate entity actually wants to be incredibly successful, grow market share, and be kind of like present forever. You know, that's where and public sector institutions and bodies actually they want to continue to provide good quality services to the people that engage with them and around them. However, for every single charity, their number one fundamental mission should be we shouldn't exist tomorrow.
Yeah.
We want to re-exist to stop this thing that we think is terrible.
Yeah.
And if we're successful in that, then there's no need for us anymore, and then we're done.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is the vast majority of organisations will never realise that ambition.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting that if you have that as your starting point and your end goal, then relentlessly every day you should be striving for continuous improvement.
Yeah.
You should get up in the morning and think, how can we do things better? How can we do things more efficiently? How can we deliver more impact to more people for less money? Those should be the questions that we're asking ourselves because we want to be out of business. So actually, there's an interesting element whereby we should be more commercial in inverted commas in our mindset than any other organisation that exists.
Yeah, 100%. Yes. I'm not in that big I'm not like, oh my god, this is so true. Trust, I think, did, I think they say, like, they want to wrap up, or, like, they want to intend, they set themselves to be like, we no longer, we want to be in a situation where there's no longer food banks, you know, when there's no need for it.
I love their refocus.
Yeah.
So Trussell's refocus from actually, let's provide food banks, to we want to end hunger.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, yes, we will continue to deliver that service and support people in that way. Yeah. But actually, we want to eliminate hunger and food poverty. And I just think that's such a brilliant reframing because then actually you are moving positively towards something rather than passively almost maintaining the status quo.
Yeah, absolutely. You're perpetuating that issue. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. In terms of the kind, not nice piece, I see it play out the most, not play out the most, as a skills gap in leadership when it comes to this particular issue. It's linked to feedback and being able to have, honest conversations. We can call them all sorts, courageous, honest, big, whatever you want to say. Just, what's your take on that in terms of leadership and role modelling that kind not nice piece?
I think that we need to do better at developing our future leaders. Right. I think that my pathway to leadership has come from being, looking at other people, reading books, developing my practice, seeing what I like, what I don't like, all that kind of stuff. But we don't develop leaders, and often we appoint people into leadership roles because of their technical skill as opposed to their leadership capability, and the two things are fundamentally different. Mm-hmm. And so you end up with a lottery. Yeah. You get some people who are naturally adept to face into having those kind of conversations, who can provide feedback in a way that's constructive, that is well received. And also we don't create a cultural environment where people want to get that, so we're much more happy to say, oh, you did an amazing job, or well done, or we'll have a little mini celebration for this thing that you achieved. We're very happy to do that, but we're less happy to talk about, oh, this didn't go quite well, or the other way we wanted to, what can we learn from it? Yeah. And so I think that there is something around how we develop people, and also, more importantly, how do we distinguish the characteristics, skills and attributes we need for leaders, and then test for that at interview. Yeah. So that people aspiring in their career and want to progress into leadership roles understand that there's a difference between being a subject matter expert
absolutely.
Working really hard and actually being able to lead a team of people.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I do agree with that investment in the future piece. One of this has sparked my thinking around like courage to fail or failure being seen as normalised in the charity sector. I think we struggle the most with that concept. The fear of failure is very high. I mean, I remember when I did a lot of work with members when I was at NCBO, and that fear of failure really kind of came through strongly. And that was also quite linked to perfectionism, wanting to kind of just make sure everything. How do you think we can enable or support leaders in letting go of some of that and kind of leaning into that failure as more of in a different way? I think, what's your thoughts on that in terms of perfectionism, failure, and the courage to fail?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something about I always think about, I talk to people about this, talk about WD-40.
Right.
Right.
I don't like the cleaning.
The stuff, the universal stuff, you've got a problem, right, spread some WD-40 on it and probably fix it. That's called WD-40 because it was their 40th attempt.
Oh, that's amazing.
There are loads of there's a great book called 10 Faces of Innovation, and in it there are loads of there's a whole thing which is around I think it's the inventor mindset, but it's like people who create it's like Thomas Edison. I haven't failed. I've just found 1,000 ways don't work. That mindset around the only way in pursuit of innovation, in pursuit of developing something that could be great, we're inevitably going to get things wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if your organisation has a resistance to or reluctance to acknowledge, embrace, or even encourage and accept failure, then you're never going to innovate.
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to be cautious, and everyone's going to play it safe. And if you play it safe, you're not testing the boundaries, you're not trying new stuff.
Yeah.
When I was my early career, I was at V, and they had we had V Toys. It was a youth volunteering charity created by Labour. We had this money, we weren't allowed to get beyond a certain size, and we had this body, V20s, group of young people to inspire. And this sticks with me to this day. And we were talking about grant giving, and we had all these people who were experts that had been brought in, that had been hired in terms of our grant teams and all this kind of stuff. It was at the V20, we want to do a fund for young people, what should we do? And they were like, right, what you want to do is you want to get out this box so they can have fun creating their application. And everyone who sends an application in gets a telephone interview. And we went to them like they were mad. Because we're like, what do you mean? Everyone who sends an application in, we're going to do a telephone interview, and then we're just going to give them whatever money they ask for, and we're just going to trust they're going to deliver. And it was completely flipped. We did it. I was responsible for evaluation when I was there. Pound for pound, return on investment, that was by far, most successful thing that we did.
Wow.
Young people were coming in, and there were loads of people who were in those telephone interviews saying, I wouldn't have applied if this wasn't the process.
Oh, wow.
Because it was just written. I wasn't felt confident. So it was just like, it just made it so much more accessible for me. We had young people who were coming in with budgets of like £547.31, even though it could bid up to £2.5 grand, because they thought through how much money is it going to cost me to deliver what I want to do. And the vast majority of them did what they said they were going to do. So they didn't just come like, take the money, go, thanks very much, go buy an Xbox and get some pizzas in. And so that was a very early lesson for me, that actually thinking slightly differently and trusting your instinct. And it could have been a failure, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was really successful. So, yeah, I think if you don't try different stuff, you're just going to end up doing more of the same. And currently, more of the same is probably not giving you what you need.
I agree. And I think if there's ever a time that message is listened to, it's the internet, like right now, with the world where it is. So, thank you. That's such a powerful example. That's really lovely as well of the children. Because I went to a place there where I was like, I would have applied for that, because it would have been safe to go, I was going to be, I was going to have a conversation with someone, or, it would have been, so, that's a really great example of innovation and taking risks. And they're not even risks, really, they're just trying different ways of doing things, absolutely, which I think we need to do more of in this world, so,
Definitely.
Thank you. Tell us a bit, so, tell me the final kind of theme that you wanted to check in around, and I have so many thoughts on this, expectations and boundaries. So tell me a bit more about that. Before you do though, I mean, I'm just going to take you out, because we did boundaries. I did an exec session yesterday with a new exec team, and we were talking about a charity, and we were talking about boundaries, etc. So the reason I'm telling you this has got nothing to do with the theme, right? But one of the people, we were having lunch, and one of the exec leaders, their ops director, was sat with me, and I was just sat in, and she was like, oh, what do you do? And I kind of chatting. So I said, oh, tomorrow I'm going to be recording this podcast with you. And she was like, oh, well, you won't remember me, but I thought, well, you were a softball, like a charity softball.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And she said, you know, like a charity softball. So she was like, he won't remember me, like he won't know my name, but she was like, I remember him, because there was loads of charities that got involved in this. And I was like, that's so weird. I was like, I'm going to tell him that tomorrow. That was yesterday.
Wow, I'm all for football as well. That's probably why she remembered me how bad I was. So, God, right, you throw me now. I just got charity softball in my head now. So expectations and boundaries. I think particularly, again, in the charity world, I think there is something around the world that we're in now, and that people's expectations are shifting, and that I think we need to be really clear around where does the role of the organisation start and stop, and where does your responsibility kind of like begin thereafter, and to be clear around, as an organisation, we are invested in you. We want to see you grow and develop, and we want you to have a really positive experience whilst you're with us. But there might be certain things that are impacting on you that we will support you best we can, and we will signpost you to other support. But there's an accountability in relation to that sits and rests with you, it doesn't rest with us. And I think that I'm seeing it increasingly that people's expectations of their employer are starting to go above and beyond what I would say would be reasonable in terms of what you can expect. And I think that that's particularly challenging in the environment that we're in now, where there are a whole raft of things that are impacting people from multiple directions. And I think there are organisations with conscience out there that are trying to do their best to help people through those times, but there is a limit to what they're able to do, what they can do. And the other thing, slightly connected to this, is around people coming into organisations because they've got lived experience. And I think it's really important. I think it's a great thing when people do, but not necessarily being aware of how working in that organisation will impact their lived experience and may be triggering for them. And so their ability to, it's impossible for them to then have the boundaries that they need within the workplace. And so they then place themselves, and then you're in this catch-22, you're in this organisation, you care fundamentally about the cause. You know, I think cancer charities probably experience this probably more than most.
Well, actually, you say that. Yesterday, I was working for it's a rape and sexual abuse charity with a high number of the workforce that were survivors of rape and sexual abuse, and this was the conversation we were having about whether it's informed, whether that lived experience is used to inform, or whether it's led by people who have that, because actually you're putting those individuals in positions of incredible harm, potentially, by re-traumatising or aspects. So it's very interesting that you check that in, and it's so true for so many that work in the charity sector. I remember when I first started in HR, I was in my early 20s, and I worked for a private mental health care provider, Europe's largest private priority, and it was their flagship. And eating disorders, which is one of the services, there was a really clear, kind of almost framework that patients that had recovered from an eating disorder weren't necessarily able to support. So there's always an appetite when you experience trauma that you want to be able to support. A lot of people have the appetite to want to give back. And then there was very clear, because actually what we found was, through my time there, we did a short study, and people would relapse into having this sort of if they came in too soon. So there was a real support pathway that we had to kind of co-create with those individuals to kind of adjust things to support them being able to give back in that way. And in some instances we actually were saying, well, unfortunately this is not going to be a safe environment, so we weren't able to actually engage them in whatever they wanted to do. But it is it's on an agenda for so many of my charity clients at the moment, how to utilise that lived experience, and that kind of manifests in boundaries and expectations.
You're naturally going to attract people that resonate with your cause. They're going to want to come and work for you, and they're going to be incredibly passionate, and they are going to work like absolute troopers to try and help your charity to deliver the benefit. But there is a risk to them, and how up front before, because I think once you get into an interview process, I mean, we've had people coming through for interview for roles at our organisation, where we've talked about that you're going to be exposed to some pretty challenging and difficult content, and in an interview they're like, oh yeah, I'll be fine, right? Or volunteers looking to come through and to volunteer, and they're like, yeah, I'll be fine, I'll be alright, once we're being interviewed. And then the reality hits when they're actually doing a role, and it has an impact on them. And it's not like you kind of like, you're trying to support them through that, but at the back of your mind there is that niggling worry about, are they in a position now where they're are they doing damage or impacting negatively on themselves as a result of being engaged with us? And are they able to either see that,
Yeah.
or B, do they now feel trapped? Where they, if they were to leave, they would see that as I failed because I left the organisation.
That must make it. Yeah. No, yeah.
And so I think there is something about being really clear with people in terms of these are the expectations, this is the nature of the role you're coming into, these are the things that we'll be asking you to do. This is what you'll be exposed to. So they're coming in and they've got a full understanding of what the impact will be. Having the right and appropriate support in place to help people where there is likely to be an impact in relation to the work they do with you. But being also clear around this is where our support for you will start. And this is what will signpost you to gain maybe the help or the support that you need. But I think it's a really difficult one. I think it's one that is a difficult conversation for charities to have openly internally, because I fear that people will perceive that judgment is being passed, or that people are saying we don't want people with lived experience here, or those kinds of things. And I think it couldn't be further from the case. But I think there is trying to be a responsible employer, but equally trying to maintain the boundaries of what you should be doing, what's right for you to be doing as an employer.
I think so many of my listeners and clients will really resonate with that, and especially in the charity sector, because there's a culture sometimes where people with a good experience, the cause almost becomes the driver for people's interactions rather than the organisational entity, i.e. I belong to this organisation as opposed to I'm here to help someone overcome this experience. And that actually can be not great when you're trying to shift culture, evolve culture, or bring people with you on a journey. So thank you for checking that term in. I know that's going to resonate with so many of us. And thank you for coming along for the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. You've been inspiring us always. I always find myself just always thinking of like the ways you get to unlock parts of my thinking as well through this conversation. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope
definitely. I love being here. Thanks for having me, Rush.
Pleasure. Thanks everyone for listening, and take care.